In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the current conditions, diving into the upcoming pattern where there is plenty of Arctic blast expected and very dry conditions, actually. We'll get into that in just a moment. Right now, we're taking a look at some storminess across the nation in a couple of spots. We could see here for the western United States and central United States, kind of the Rockies, and then in through a lot of the northern plains here. We could see some of these showers happening, snow and rain, actually. We'll take a look at some of that in a little bit. And then we could see the remnants of Ian still kind of around here for the mid-Atlantic, and this is going to finally move out in just a little while. So we'll talk about that as well. Obviously, not a lot to go over, but we will zoom into some different regions here just real quickly. First off, I guess we'll talk about Montana here, where we do have some snowfall happening and some rainfall in some spots. It just depends where you're at, but definitely some showers and snow showers happening here in these mountain ranges. And for those areas not in the mountains, but lower elevation regions there nearby the mountains, we see some snowfall happening here in Colorado overnight as well for these areas. And that is kind of warming up. It looks like the snowfall is becoming a little bit less abundant as the morning has kind of arrived here, but there is plenty of precipitation around for all of these areas. And then as we can see for the upper Midwest, plenty of storminess up here as well for the Dakotas, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, all of these areas seeing light to moderate precipitation. They're pretty scattered and isolated around though. Not too concerning by any means, obviously. And then we have our remnants of Ian here, kind of a nor'easter at this point. Definitely still around, bringing some rainfall primarily for the mid-Atlantic, talking Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C., West Virginia there, and then even northern Virginia. All of these areas seeing some precipitation with this. And cold air is going to follow this. I think our high here in Virginia for Tuesday is expected to be in the 50s, which is nearby our wintertime average high here in Virginia, let alone October. I mean, unbelievably cold temperatures for some spots, record lows potentially for some spots in some of these upcoming hard freezes potentially for some spots in the mountains, and frosts for sure for some other folks, as lows will get into the 30s and even 20s for certain spots. We'll talk about all of that in a little bit. What we're going to do is actually move on. Oh yeah, and by the way, we have definitely a big tropical concern to talk about as a storm looks to follow kind of in behind where Ian started out in the southern Caribbean, and we don't know what will happen after that, but we know there is a chance of development in that same area, which is super concerning to see. So we'll talk about that as well a little bit later on. Now here we are taking a look at the upcoming storminess, and we're not going to see a whole lot here. We see that what was Ian is now kind of moving to the coast here by the time we're reaching overnight hours tonight, kind of around 5 a.m. Monday, October 3rd timeframe. We do have some spotty activity out there in the west there. So for portions of Montana, Idaho there, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, all of these areas we're seeing some spotty storminess happening in there. By the time we reach Tuesday here, we see that this storm is still out here, kind of in the form of a nor'easter. We see this storminess kind of moving a little bit further eastward here towards more of the central United States Wednesday time frame. Something interesting is happening here by midweek. We see a low somewhere in here, and there is some snowfall associated with this as well. We can see underneath, we have some storminess underneath this area as well, and this is all going to kind of lead towards a big-time Arctic blast. As this low-pressure system moves up, we see a massive cold front moving through, and this is what's going to allow for just some deep Arctic air to make its way into the eastern United States around primarily, I would say, the Friday to Sunday time frame, especially is when we're watching. So we're definitely going to be watching for that. And then we see another one towards the end here, so we're kind of quiet, and then at the end of the model run, we see another Arctic blast here ready to just blast in. So this is not going to stop anytime soon. We're going to continue to see this pattern take place, and it's going to be a really interesting ride as we just continue to track this crazy pattern we've been in for a month plus here. Now, as far as total precipitation here, obviously nothing jumping off the screen here. Maybe the mid-Atlantic seeing the most. They're seeing quite a bit actually, but outside of that, I mean, extremely quiet over the next 10 days for the entire country. Anywhere in the whites, we expect practically no precipitation. Your grays will be 1/10 of an inch or less of precipitation. Your greens will be 1/10 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. Your blues will be 1/2 an inch to an inch. Your yellows will be 1 inch to 2 inches. Your reds will be 2 to 5 inches. And then your browns will be 5 to 10 inches of precipitation. Very interesting how small the amounts are here outside of the mid-Atlantic. Definitely not a super active week ahead, or 10 days or so, really. Now, total snowfall here, Again, kind of increasing here, not improving, depending on how you look at it, but definitely across the Rockies, both the Canadian and the American Rockies there. We can see anywhere from in the grays, the dusting, if anything, your blues 2 to 6 inches of snowfall, and there is some purples there in the mountain peaks. That's going to be 6 to 10 inches of snowfall. Definitely quite a bit happening there. We can see for the northeast, we're seeing some here. We're seeing for some of the mountains in West Virginia, some potentially. Very interesting there. And then here for northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, in the upper peninsula of Michigan there, we are seeing some spotty snowfall taking place. And if I'm not mistaken, there could be a couple spots here in Nebraska, very far western Nebraska. That's pretty high elevation out there, but there is some taking place. I see some for the Sierra Nevadas and some for the Cascades. So we're starting to get some spotty snowfall in some spots. Definitely spreading. And over the course of the next month, we're going to see a huge increase in this, as we've already seen over the past month. We're going to pretty much get much more than this by the time we're taking a look at early November timeframe, which I can't believe is right around the corner. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the upcoming temperature pattern real quickly. That's the end, so spoiler alert. But right now, we're in a pretty cold pattern here in the east, as you can see, eastern Canada and eastern United States. There is some colder areas for the west as well there. I don't know what that shape was, but I think it gets the point across. We see really cold here along the eastern seaboard especially, but for the entire eastern United States, Monday here, October 3rd. Tuesday as well, which is really cold around for this nor'easter that is in these areas. And then here comes an Arctic blast, okay? So here it is about to blast down into the eastern United States. Again, the definition of an Arctic blast has nothing to do with your actual temperatures. All it has to do with is the fact that an Arctic air mass, which usually does bring cold temperatures, is heading from the Arctic regions and blasting into the United States. It's an Arctic blast for the United States. And that's my definition. I think that's the most logical definition. I really wanted to mention something else. Let's get to where this moves in. So we can see really cold temperatures moving in by the time we're taking a look at about the weekend, about the 9th of October here approximately. A lot of people were like, how is this an Arctic blast for instance, I forget what it was that the people particularly pointed out, but the Northeast here. It was somewhere in the Northeast. They were like, how is it that that upstate New York is seeing the greens and Louisiana and Mississippi are too? How is that an Arctic blast? Well, this is all relative to your average temperature where you're at. So, for instance, Louisiana, even though they're in the green, is not seeing the same temperatures as upstate New York. All this means is that they're both seeing 10 degrees below what is normal for their location here on Sunday, October 9th. So New York is going to be significantly colder than Louisiana and Mississippi here, even though they're the same color. So it's all based on your average. This model knows the average temperatures across the nation, and it takes that into consideration and shows us here on the bottom whether it's below or above normals here. So we can see that the greens, for instance, where we have a lot of these, this is 10 to 15 degrees below what your normal is if you're in the green. Keep that in mind. So this is truly an Arctic blast, as true as they come. It blasted from the Arctic regions, so it is Arctic, and it did blast, so it's an Arctic blast, rest assured. We can see that there is cold air that sticks around with that as well. We do get a warm up here in the longer range, I will say, around October 11th or something like that. After the 10th at least is when we get this warm air surging up here, and we get colder air moving into the northwest. But this at the end here looks like it's probably going to blast more towards the central and eastern United States again, bringing another Arctic blast. Wouldn't be surprised to see this warm air recycle back west, cold air move east. That looks like what's going to happen here. Now that's the end of our temperature pattern model run here. Let's take a look at the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook, because I'm actually pretty concerned. So we still have this red area out here where we have a 30% chance of development over the next 48 hours, but a 70% chance of development over the next 5 days, which is a pretty considerable high chance there. And then we could see for the Southern Caribbean, we have to watch this one now. 10% chance of development over the next 48 hours, but a 20% chance of development over the next 5 days. And look at that. This is just where Ian headed. This could get suppressed to the south, but if it can somehow get going up here northward towards the Gulf, we're in trouble once again. Obviously, Ian was a historically bad storm, and it would be really, it's not really going to be realistic to expect this storm to be anything like that. but to see a storm heading even nearby where that one headed is definitely not what you want to see. Especially when it's this close to when it happened. Usually the pattern can still be similar, which could be sufficient for a storm to take a similar track or similar intensity. But you don't get Category 5, Category 4s every day, So we can't really, it's not in the expectation that this storm would do that. Obviously, anything is possible. This could be a monster Category 5 for all I know. But that is not the most likely outcome, obviously. We're going to continue to track this considering all possibilities. And tune in with us daily because we do upload daily and we will be taking a look at this daily. So tune in daily. Be sure to subscribe so you get those updates. Like the video if you did enjoy it and leave a comment down below with your thoughts. I'll see you guys in the next video.